Sarah, and I'll turn my camera off as well, so no distractions. Okay, Andy, Sarah, thank you very much. Handing over to you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Welcome, everyone. I think Sarah's on the call. I did see her sneak in.
I am. I'm here. Hi.
You're there. Excellent. So I shall start to share my screen, which hopefully will work. If someone can just give me a thumbs up or let me know they can see. It's working. Excellent. So we're here to talk to you this afternoon about data and analytics workforce, who, what, how, and why. Jane's already introduced us, so we won't introduce ourselves again. Let's just crack on with things. So first question, who are they? Who are this wonderful data and analytics workforce? So as Jane alluded to, Sarah and I have got 59 years worth of experience in the NHS. Sounds very scary when it's said like that. I'll let you guess who's got more. Actually, it's me, don't worry. So back in the days, we used to be writing, well, I used to write full transcript and print it off on paper like that in order to check the code. We used to have the referral forms coming in. We had fax machines, but the world changes, digital technology advances, what we can do with computing, with data, and everything changes. So we've now got big data. We're talking about AI. We're talking about restructuring the NHS for a change. So the data roles that we've got are changing to keep up with that. And to give you an idea of just how quick that's going on, we've had 5 roles added in the last 12 months on the government digital and data capability framework, which is where we look to for, what those sort of data roles are that are there. So we've had analytics engineer, data ethicist, data governance manager, digital evaluator came out 2 months ago, although we've got a slight different take on that because you're evaluating stuff and it might be digital or it could be something else. And then we've got machine learning engineer. And a lot of the times these roles aren't coming because somebody's just thought, oh yeah, it'd be a really great idea to have that. It's because there's a need that's been generated for it. There's something now where there's the need for these roles to be there that previously didn't exist. So we're in quite a changing world within analytics. It's helping to get some more of those specialisms that are there, help us to see how we can start to evolve and have our career paths. So we estimate there's about 13,000 of the data professionals in health and care in the UK, of which we've got 10,200 in England and Wales. So I was going to do a guess this by competition, but obviously it's a call. But so just to have a quick think before I reveal the answer, how many of those 10,200 do you think come under the job role of data analyst? Just have a think, and then I shall reveal the answer to you is, reckon there's about 8,345. So the majority, over 80% of the data and analytics workforce at the minute come under that data analyst job title. Data engineers, just over 1,000. Data scientists, about 500 of those. And then as we go down, data governance manager, analytics engineers, machine learning engineers, they're getting more and more less in number because those are the newer roles that are sort of being defined and looked at. And as it says there, digital evaluator, when we did those estimates, we didn't even know about the digital evaluator. So we haven't even got an estimate as yet for how many people are digital evaluators. But one of the key things that we'll be wanting to look at and track, and this will be through the Digital Skills Development Network census work that gets done over the next few years, is how those numbers start to change. Will we see a drift from people that have been traditionally called data analysts into some of these other more specialized roles because they become needed more and become more prominent? Will we see reductions in those roles? Will we see increases? Where are we going to start to find the changes that go on? So a kind of key start point for this is what are those skills that we have within those different roles? Now, fortunately, we've got the National Competency Framework, and I saw that the Godfather had snuck in as well, Hugh, and the wonderful Donna as well, who are kind of really fundamental in the work that got done on the National Competency Framework. So we've got this that expresses over 5 practitioner levels, broken down into different skill areas, the things that you would want to be doing in all these different rows. And this wonderful animation that Sarah's done here shows some of the interconnectivity that we have within those roles. So you can know now that you could start off on a data engineer pathway, and then you could change and you could jump onto maybe a data governance line, or you could go onto the analytics engineer line. We've never really had anything that shows you how careers can develop within data and analytics. It may be that you've joined as an information analyst and then you've just kind of moved on to the next step that was there, or maybe into a performance analyst, and maybe not had that view as to what the different range and breadth of roles that we have within data and analytics offers, and how you can sort of look at what skills would you want to evolve to move into those, and how could you progress. So if you haven't seen the National Competency Framework, we can tell you loads about it, but we're not going to exhaustively go over it today. There's loads of resources on Analyst X that you can look at, and there's lots and lots of stuff that you can find out about the framework, and we can even come back and do another session on it. But as I say, it sets out the minute for the 8 roles that we've got, and we're on in October going to be looking at the digital evaluator to add that in. What are those skills, how you start to benchmark yourself, how you start to understand what the progression is as you move through those roles and get more experienced and build your knowledge in order to then progress. And if you want to look at how you can move your career and start to take a slightly different track because there's something that you're interested in, what you want to be building your skills in, how you might want to be doing that. This is roughly what it looks like when you go on. There is also an online version that we are starting to roll out now that does exactly the same stuff, but it's just online. It's on the Digital Learning Solutions platform. So it then becomes a portable document that you can take with you and assign your line manager to as you move around. So there'll be lots more exciting stuff coming out about that over the year. But you basically can go in, you put a green, so you put a Y for yes, I can do that, and it turns it green. You don't put a green yes in. And that then is something where you go, yeah, I feel like I'm fairly confident about that. You know, if I feel like I can do that, I'm good at that. No, I'll put a T there because I want to target this skill. This is something where I want to start to build my knowledge and build my skills. And there are 2 key things that then happen from this. If you tick something as yes, then what you want to be able to do is to then be able to give some examples of how you've applied that learning. If there's a course that you've done that, you know, supports that, great, make a note of it, but then make a note of, and this is how I used it. This is what I implemented. This is my evidence as to how I've done it. Because as we'll come on to later, wherever you go for professional accreditation, and that's what we want people to be doing within data and analytics, you're going to need a portfolio of evidence that not just says, I am a brilliant analyst, but this shows the brilliant ways that I apply the skills that I've got. So you can do that on the competency framework. You can download the competency framework from Analyst X now. You can complete it straight away, and you can use it for your personal development. You can share it with your line manager if you want and talk about how you can create opportunities to do things, but it helps you benchmark where you are at the minute and those skills that you might want to be doing. So how can we then start to use that framework to think about the changing world that we're in within the NHS and social care? So we've now got Fit for the Future with some of those groundbreaking ideas like care in the community and prevention. If only we'd thought of those years ago, that would have been great. There are 18 mentions of the word analytics in that report, and I know that because I co-piloted it and said, how many times has analytics come up? 12 of which are in the context of predictive analytics. And I realized, I don't think it'll show up, but I've actually got a book here which is called Predictive Analytics for Dummies that I bought a few years ago. So I was obviously ahead of the curve on this one. But if we then looked and we said, okay, so what are the things within predictive analytics that we're going to know? That stuff about project scoping, data collection and prep, model selection and training, model evaluation and refinement, model deployment and monitoring. And then start to think, this is not an exhaustive list, so please don't think this is all you need to know to do predictive analytics. But what areas of the competency framework could we look at that are going to help support and build that knowledge? The stuff around the project planning, the stuff around the data prep and the wrangling, the predictive and prescriptive analytics, the programming side of thing that you're going to be needing with it, so that we can then start to say, if this is the ask, this then becomes the underpinning skills and capabilities that we need in order to be able to deliver on that ask. And then what we're able to do is to say, well, if those are the skills and capabilities that we need, where are we at the minute, and where do we need to bolster our skills and our work that we're doing in order to be able to deliver that future ask? And putting it into more of a skills and competencies way helps us understand how we start to map out those pathways from what we're doing at the moment to where we want to get to in order to be doing more on predictive analytics. And this is without all the stuff about how we actually then interpret all those predictive analytics, how we counter the fact that every month you will see that the inflation figure that comes out is higher or lower than expected. And we've been asked to predict 10 years time when people struggle with, 1 month. What are the things that we need to put in? What are the cautions that we need to be telling people around what a predictive model is going to say and how they want to be interpreting the data that we've got? There is one mention of the word analysts in the 10-year plan, but it is key. And I've kind of made the letters or made some of the words bigger because it reads even better. It says analysts will be integral in the future. So the role that we've got and the functions that we play are going to be key to the future delivery and success of the NHS and the services that we offer and the outcomes that patients get. So we have a role, and one of the things that we need to be doing is working out how we best fit and serve and use the skills that we have in order to making those impacts, but we're seen as key, and I think that's really important. We've also got stuff like the model ICB blueprint, talking about those functions that are going to be coming into scope, putting even more of an emphasis on the capabilities and areas that ICBs need to really be prioritising. And we can do a similar thing again. We can start to look at those and we can start to say, okay, if that's the activity that we're wanting to do, what become those underpinning skills and competencies that we need to make sure we have within our areas in order to be able to deliver those skills. There's stuff that was on there about epidemiological stuff. Sarah and I this morning have been working on the development of the first ever domain area for the competency framework around public health intelligence. So this is how you take core analytical skills and then apply them within a specific area. So there'll be lots of stuff that's going to come out from that as well. But again, being able to link competencies and see things and see skills and areas that you want to be developing and enhancing in order to then be able to deliver on those future asks is essential, because then you can look and go, well, actually, if we need those influencing skills at levels 4 and 5, where are we at the minute? Have we got a team that's fully geared up to do that? Am I fully geared up to do that? What can I be doing? How can I start to build my learning in that area in order to get more confident on those influencing skills, on those communication skills, or to get more on that specialism of evaluative analytics? And I should really be able to spell evaluative correctly, which I haven't done there. So it's about understanding those gaps and helping us to see what the pathways are for how we then move forwards. How are you going to decide on your career journey? You could take Sarah and I both took the scenic route, kind of wandering around, going from different organisations. You may want to take the mainstream motorway, but how are you going to structure your career development? How are you going to start to think about the skills that you want to focus on, the areas that we think that we're going to be needing in the future, and how are you then going to start to build those skills? So how you can identify those skills to target. I will stop. I'm doing more of the talking today because Sarah had a long meeting this morning and her voice is a bit kind of now. So she will jump in at some point, but we'll keep going with me for the minute. So don't worry, I will shut up at some point. So we've got Colm here, who joined the ICB 6 months ago as a data engineer. He was straight from uni, but he's keen. He wants to progress. He wants to see how he can develop his skills. So he has a chat with his line manager at their quarterly performance development meeting. And the manager suggests, well, actually, we've got the National Competency Framework that we've started to use now. So why don't you start to use that as a way to understand how you can look at doing that progression. So he does. So he takes that, he starts to go on, he puts his yeses on for the things that he can do, he puts his T's on for things that he wants to target. For everything that he's ticking yes, he's starting to do a little evidence portfolio thing that shows how he's doing it. So he's building his evidence portfolio that he can show to his manager, right, I'm good at doing this, how do I start to build up my skills on this? So he then goes and has a chat with his manager, they work through what's ticked there on the framework. And as a result of that, they decide that they're going to put Colin onto the level 5 data engineering apprenticeship. So he's done that now, so he's on there. He's also starting to look at the NHS Data Academy. Don't worry if you don't know what that is, because Sarah's going to talk about that a bit later on. And he's also joined a community of practice for data engineers on Analyst X, so he can start to network with people who are doing similar roles in other areas and start to share their learning. So this is a way that you can then start to use the framework as a way to help build and guide your learning and work out what the effective ways to develop your skills are. Aisha, on the other hand, she's been working as a data scientist for a few years now, and at her recent PDP, she's actually said to her manager, do you know what, I'm really enjoying doing the programming side of stuff. That's a real thing that, you know, kind of excites me and I want to get more on. So the manager says, well, I'll have a look around, we'll see what you can be doing on there. Looks at the framework and goes, aha, at data science, machine learning engineer intersection, we need to come up with some fancy name for these junctions. We can then see that some of those core skills that she's built up within data science could then track onto the machine learning engineer role, which is more on that technical programming side. So we can then see, well, that's an option for her to do. She can then start to look using the competency framework. What more would I need to be doing in this area? What are the skills that I could start to build up in order to progress into that? So she does that, starts to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are there, using the academy again, starting to do hackathons, going on some webinars about machine learning, and also doing the networking as well with the data science people who've got more of an interest in the machine learning engineer. So once again, it's starting to look at ways that she can help build her skills, build her confidence, and build her understanding. So you might ask, well, why are we doing all this? So using the framework provides a structure for your continuing professional development, and that's really important. We've already identified that in the last 12 months, we've had 5 new data roles that have come in, but the pace of change that we have within data and analytics at the minute is probably faster than we've ever had. The resources and the tools that we have to do our work are moving forwards, and part of our responsibility working in data and analytics is to make sure we keep up with those and see how we can best use some of those technologies that we can to better do the work that we're doing, maybe do it faster, maybe produce slightly different outputs, better visualizations. It supports your personal learning development conversations, as we saw with both Colin and Aisha. They used the framework as a way to target areas that they wanted to work on and identify and build skills on. And that helps to really give a structure to those conversations that you're having and be more specific what you want to do. It builds your confidence and ability and helps you use your skills to make impacts on patient outcomes. Too often, you will all know someone who's a very modest analyst who does stuff and you go, that is absolutely fantastic. But we never have a way to benchmark that. We never have a way to see those standards that we're hitting and then how we can get better and better at doing the stuff we do. And this gives us a way of doing that and linking it, you know, particularly through the Fit for the Future plan and the plans for the ICB to really see how the work that we do impacts on patient outcomes. As I said, it helps you develop your portfolio of evidence to show how brilliant you are, because every person on this call is brilliant. You just need to make sure you can show how brilliant you are as an analyst, because you do some fantastic work and you want a way of showcasing that so you can do it. Allows you to see your future career paths. So as I say, you're thinking, well, how can I build on these skills? How can I get more involved in X, Y, Z? You've now got a way that helps you see the things that you need to do and the ways that you need to build your skills and able to do that. and it supports your application for professional accreditation. As I say, building that evidence of how you're doing stuff. We're constantly chatting with AFA and trying to make sure that we want to seamlessly tailor this so that as you build your evidence portfolios, it ties in with the standards and the levels of attainment that you want to have in order to be able to achieve professional accreditation. So that's my bit. I'm going to hand over to Sarah now because it's talking about the academy. Sarah.
You are indeed, and apologies for the particularly glorious voice that I have today. So as I said, Andy has built up and done a fabulous job of explaining the purpose of the National Competency Framework, but obviously we need to build on that with the idea of it's fantastic being able to identify what you need to develop skills in and having that guidance, but then so much becomes well, great, how do I do that? So some of those areas are going to be very obviously, I need to learn by doing. And some of those areas are going to be, how do I find the appropriate skills and training areas to help me progress in some of those areas and understanding, maybe especially in some of those technical software skill areas, etc. So that's really where the NHS Data and Analytics Academy comes in, and this is very much based around this like 70-20-10 model for learning and development. We all learn best by doing, but other than that, we learn best by interacting with our peers, learning from shared examples, as well as then having the opportunity to access free training and development resources structured around the different data roles and the structure of the National Competency Framework. So what is the Data and Analytics Academy? So Andy obviously mentioned the Academy has multiple pillars making up its cornerstones, and these are the 4 areas that we're tackling as part of like a wholesale approach to raising the bar across. Firstly is obviously new entry talent. We're only as good as the people we've got coming in, and we know that we need to hello, pretty background there for a second, Andy. We know we need to raise awareness of the fantastic opportunities of data and analytics as a career within school age, diversifying our entry pipelines so that we are actually able to bring in more people who work locally into data and analytics rather than always being reliant on graduate intakes and people being able to move around the country. So what we're doing on that is very much around raising awareness, raising data literacy skills, doing online work experience challenges, connecting up local organisations and giving people the platform to be able to talk about apprenticeships and graduate intake and internship and placement opportunities, and promoting those schemes out to NHS providers to get more and more people to take part in them. The second area is around that 10,270 odd people. 276, I think, is the technical estimate number. How do we help upskill those people that are already in the service around their core competencies in the National Competency Framework and specialist technical skills, etc. And then again, that is through a combination of using the structure of the National Competency Framework and mapping opportunities to it. So what's the most appropriate apprenticeship scheme for someone at a certain level needing to tackle certain skills? We've got that mapped. Looking for, if we're doing interactive opportunities for training, what is it actually matching? And then also then what are free e-learning signposting that we can push people towards that might then enable them to either get their certifications or if at least have free to audit skills, etc., so they can do the learning even if they necessarily might have to pay for the certifications. Thirdly, to look at how we build the future CDAOs. It's only going to be a growth leadership, and data is only going to get more and more important in leadership. So what we need to do is we need to be able to grow leaders from within our data profession to be able to build that capability to lead our own. So looking at what are data specific leadership skills, etc., and how do we develop either knowledge-based programs or podcasts or again online modules that would support the development of those skills within our workforce. And then lastly, how do we bring our workforce with us? So although I'm not proposing that we're going to go out and run en masse data literacy skills across our clinical workforce, for example, but how do we at least set a benchmark for data competency and confidence and provide people with, again, free to access signposted e-learning content that would allow them to grow in their understanding and confidence of day-to-day tasks and decision making. Andy, next slide, please. So yes, so as I said, Pillar 2 upskilling is very much on this, that the home of this mainly is the Learning Hub. And this is where basically we're working with strategic partners from Analyst X, as well as other areas, to map existing training that exists to the National Competency Framework practitioners, levels and competencies. It's free to people creating accounts, and people who are non-NHS can create an account in this. And what that enables you to do is click through, look at going under data analysts, going under data analyst core competency level 1, practitioner level 1, and then looking at the specific competencies that covers, and then the specific training that we've already mapped to that area. And this will be a combination of maybe online e-courses that you can audit for free, or articles that will give a really good insight into answering a particular skill, or they might even then be case study examples. There's a real selection of different training resources that are put up under those different areas. It is still very much being built. It launched officially in April, and we're adding content on a monthly basis, etc. We've got stuff up for most areas now, but again, it's still very much a build, and we're building from like the most junior level up. Next slide, please, Andy. Obviously, the other area for upskilling is being able to provide you knowledge of where there is interactive training, networking and CPD opportunities. So that might be our strategic partners from Analyst X who are offering software specific training, for example. A good example being UK Health Data Research had done some really good communications for communicating about data, training video e-content that they had obviously created that's still free to access. We link to from that, but they'd also run a webinar about it. Our colleagues over at Snowflake and Kubrick have been running some free in-person introduction to Python. Our lovely colleagues over at UK Facts and Dimensions, who obviously are really use NHS all the time, they have been running free basic SQL training for quite some time now. So it's about raising awareness of these training opportunities, telling you how they link into the National Competency Framework. A lot of them, because they're specialist technical skills, link into the specialist area, but about going, this is how you can access if you need instructor-led training, etc. Anything that comes up, pushing it through that out through our Academy LinkedIn page to make people aware of things, make people aware of webinar series. We've got stuff with IQVIA that's coming up in September that again is focusing on those AI machine learning skills, an introduction to, with then in partnership with the NHS data science community, who are then pushing out as part of those webinars examples, case study examples from the NHS. So it's going to be a really interesting webinar series that's going to be running through September. So these types of CPD, interactive training, any networking events that come up, whether that's a conferencing, whether that's hackathon events, all these types of things. So obviously one of the things when we are pushing out content on the Learning Hub, at the moment, we've got confirmation on there around what's the course, what does it cover, has it got any fee elements to it? Most of the time, obviously, we're pushing free to access content, but it might be a fee if you want to then gain a certification. One of the things, obviously, we're planning on adding when things have gone through an accreditation process from AFA is to then also be able to put that on as part of that information on training courses. If they've been AFA accredited, then it goes on there as part of that benchmarking of information, just to basically provide that bit of clarity to people. Yes, this has gone through some form of quality checking, because at the moment we're not providing quality checking. What we're providing is signposting. Our quality checking is happening by, we have a user rating system. So if someone rates it as good, they can give it 5 stars. If they think it's rubbish, they can give it a 1 star and they can put a comment on. And so therefore we know that this then is fed back. But what we've been mapping in the first instance has been supplier-led training. So stuff from Microsoft, stuff from Snowflake, content that's coming from NHS Digital's website. So we've not really been trawling the web for like really basic content that people would go, that's pants. It's been more formally provided training and development opportunities, etc. But looking at the LinkedIn is where you would find those sorts of training content. But obviously we also are then cross-posting them in our presence on the AnalystX website to try and give everyone as much notice of those. So moving on to that, obviously AnalystX is where we get that 20, where we really get that peer-to-peer learning experience, where we have these specialist communities of practice, where we have our huddle series, where we host the podcast series. This is really, really about how do we support knowledge transfer and sharing between people and help them connect up. So I'd say, what is AnalystX? For hopefully you all know, but if you don't and you want to join, it should be pretty straightforward. It's hosted on Future NHS. It's a community of practice for people active or interested in data and analytics across health and care. We've got over 17,000 members, and it is really our place to come together and learn from each other, ask questions, network, share people. We have a shared events calendar, all these types of things. We have a huddle, which is where people, often strategic partners, come and showcase where they have done joint work with parts of the NHS, or they come to talk about a particular methodology or approach, or even it's a community of practice giving an update on what they've been up to in the last year. They generally, we have a slot every week, but let's be honest, most of the time it's only a couple of times a month that's being run. They are recorded. We have a massive historical library of content. It's been going, the huddles have been going since May of 2020. So unsurprisingly enough, quite a lot of those early ones are around COVID and COVID analytics methodology. But as you move on, we've just had one on RTT and RTT modeling. Really interesting one that's been recorded. But you'll get and go in, and there's a massive portfolio of content for you to go back through. All of them recorded. All of them generally have the slides or follow-up content from the authors on there that are a really useful resource if you want something a bit more sort of, I say, less reading, more listening. We obviously have the communities of practice. We have quite a few of them now, but these tend to be things around like specialist interest areas. So data visualization and BI, Python, evaluation, data mining, data science, you name it, there's a massive list of them. Please do go on and look at it themselves. But we also obviously link to other networks that AnalystX doesn't host, but are specialist interest networks. So Health Statistics User Group, for example, is one of the many areas that we sort of look after as a network, but they run it themselves. We just host it. And then moving on to things obviously like engagement. So yes, we have our general discussion board, which is a really good place for someone coming and asking a question and finding other like people if they can't find something on AnalystX that's unique to what they're doing. We also obviously have our podcast, the Fika podcast series, that has been a combination of people sharing their own career journeys. So do you want to know how Ming Tan got where she was? Go and listen to her talk about it in her own words. Same with Ayub, same with a whole load of different people. Your own Hugh Davis Furlong from Furlong Consulting has been on the podcast series talking about like the methodology behind the National Competency Framework. Donna Hansen has been on again talking about desktop review and all the discovery work. So there's all that sort of stuff, as well as the content we've had about careers. And this year we're moving on to, again, topics around broader data leadership. We do that in partnership with the South Central and West CSU, the lovely John O'Connell. But also we have a shared events calendar, which is really important, because this is where things, if you're going, I want to do some CPD, I want to do some webinars, but I don't know what's out and about, and you stick things in Google, go and have a look at the events calendar there first, because not only will it have training sessions that are being run, it'll also have any of the community of practice events, also have our huddles listed. It'll also have any of our strategic partners who might be running webinars on particular topics. It's worth going and looking. It's one place you can look across the whole month and identify anything that might be interested. You might be interested in you registering for, to just fill out those CPD hours that we all need to really be doing. Next one, Andy, please.
I think this next one was one that I shoved in because, of course, as AFA members as well, you've got access to all these wonderful things.
They do. And AFA branch members also put all their AFA branch meetings on our shared events calendar, which is very good of them. So we always go, I've just missed one for London, generally, when I was introducing a new member of staff to what was available network-wise. So all those types of things generally are cross-advertised on there and linked to.
And they're a wonderful resource, you know, to kind of build that skills, that knowledge, that experience that everyone's wanting. So I suppose the have we covered everything? So we got sent a list of what your requirements were, what you said you'd hope that we'd cover in the session. So let's just see whether we've done that. So future skills and evolving roles, not roads. Well, we're going, we don't need roads. Sorry. So hopefully you've got an idea now of how the skills might start to map through to future requirements, how we can start to do that. The work that I've done literally on mapping those bits there is very fledgling, but we can start to do that with those future asks, and hopefully as the data workforce plans start to evolve, as things become clearer with the future, we can start to make sure that we've got those strong links between what the future ask is that we're going to be doing and the skills that we need to do that. The impact of AI. I think there are some roles at the minute that exist within the analytical world that AI may take away. You know, you can give someone a spreadsheet now and they can just ask them to create a visualization with it, and it'll give them a 3D exploding pie chart to their heart's content. But we can understand how things are changing and hopefully start to put ourselves into a really good position for how we can maximize the skills that we've got in order to be able to capitalize on that. Professional development and training pathways. You've seen how the academy can start to help you build up some of the skills and experience in areas, and Analyst X and the work that AFRA are doing, and as well AFRA giving the professional accreditation a way that we can start to move forward, build our evidence portfolios, build our skill sets so that we can demonstrate, you know, the work that we do and the impacts that we have, and to be sharing that as well. You know, if you do something where you're ticking off a couple of areas on a competency framework by doing some work, you can then go and do a presentation at the local AFRA event, the national AFRA event, come onto Analyst X, come onto all the different forums to share how you've done it, the approach you took, the learning that you've got, because that will then encourage other analysts to start to do the same. Workforce trends and structural changes. If only we knew what was going to happen with structural changes and workforce trends. We don't at the minute. I think many of us are in the same positions at the moment, that we're still waiting to see what is going to come out of this. And probably the biggest thing that I'm aware, you know, trying to talk to people that may be working in CSUs or might be working at NHS England, going, use the competency framework, it'll be really good. It's like, yeah, but I'm worried about what's going on. You can use the competency framework now for you, to help you work out where your strengths are, where your skills are, where you could be working at the minute, whilst there's this uncertainty, but developing skills that you think are going to be in the future. It helps you prep for, you know, if you're going for those future job interviews, as I say, you know, that you've got that skills evidence, or those new opportunities that come up within your organization or another organization. So although there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment around where we're going to be going, been able to use something like the framework to benchmark where you are and to see areas that you want to develop. And hopefully now, as things become a bit clearer and we start to get that much stronger alignment between the asks that we're going to be doing and the skills and competences that we need to underpin that, you can then work out where your future is going to lie within that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can be doing now, even though there is a lot of uncertainty about that. And the opportunities and career progression. We've never had anything really that helps you see what your career pathways can be. You know, we're trying really hard to, you know, make sure that we make it clearer about how you can develop in this wonderful world of data and analytics, the opportunities that exist, the impacts that you're going to be able to have on patient outcomes, patient pathways, to make sure they get the best experiences they can, as well as taking the skills that you've spent years honing to get really good, to maximize the benefits and the impacts of that, and to see where you could take it. And as we said, how you then start to position yourself into that future landscape, that evolving world that we've got within data and analytics. Get a copy of, you know, Predictive Analytics for Dummies don't go that. I'm not recommending getting that book, but you know how you can start to build some more experience in that, because clearly if it's mentioned 18 times in Fit for the Future, that's something people are going to be wanting to talk a lot about. And we need to showcase those skills that we have. There's a lot of talent that I don't think we tap into yet within the data and analytics community that we have within the health service, and I think we really need to. And by us being more aware of our skills, by us starting to really kind of push ourselves forward and challenge into those spaces where there are the opportunities for us to excel, I think is going to be hugely beneficial to making the successful changes in the future. Thank you for listening. That's me and Sarah. Our contact details if you want to get in touch with us. But we've tried to allow plenty of time for questions, because I'm sure that there's going to be lots. And if there's not lots, then you just get an early lunch.
Great work there. Thank you ever so much, you two. So much work being done on the competency framework, and just so useful. We've never had anything like it before, and it's absolutely brilliant. Just a couple of things from me. NHS Futures, because not all our members are NHS. You don't have to be in the NHS to get onto Futures and the Analyst X part on NHS Futures, so you can still sign up for that. As Andy was saying earlier, you know, as you're working through the competency framework, if you're using it for your personal development, and you can start building your evidence. If you go for the professional registration through AFA, when you look at the application form, you will see there is a column there that links the different competencies from the NCF against the standards on the professional registration. So it makes it a lot easier for you to track them through and use what you've already done, rather than, you know, having to start again. Everything is very interlinked, so very easy to follow. And the professional registration is a quarterly submission window. July is a submission window now. The next submission window will be in October, and there'll be a professional registration workshop in September to help talk you through that. Right, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to shut up now and let people start adding to the chat, sticking up their hands and whatever. Right. Questions, everybody? Back to Sarah and Andy.
Don't be shy.
If no one asks a question, Andy has to sing.
Yeah, I've got a couple of numbers. Oh, someone's asked a question.
Annual refresh. It's a good question, Hugh. So as part of our work program, obviously we have has anything new come out from GDAD? Which it has. Etc. So we have plans. We're currently working on the first ever domain for the National Competency Framework, because traditionally we've left domain to be locally defined, because obviously it's around local knowledge, local data sets like this. We're currently working on work across OHID and local authorities, public health, as well as UXA and everything, to define what are public health intelligence domains, to then provide a structure for anybody else to want to follow for domains. We've then got a plan to do the core competency definitions for digital evaluator, or as we're calling it, evaluator brackets digital. So it's going to be a specialist evaluation analyst role. Basically, there will possibly some bare reference to digital and or other services you might want to evaluate. In ours, that work is going to happen basically in September and October. Then we will be opening the whole of the framework up for sort of review. So like we did last year, what we will be doing is we've been logging suggestions this year of recommendations and changes, some of which have been new specialisms, some of which have been tweaks to word changes around some of the existing specialisms. What we'll then do is we'll put out the framework for consultation. I think we've decided November and December, haven't we, Andy?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, so with proposals for change will be included in there, but also the opportunity for people to put in free text style comments around, like we did last year. There'll be a very detailed consultation form, forms form, which will then allow you to jump between sections. So if you don't want to comment on everything, you can just then jump to the relevant section you want to compare or put comments in on, and then we'll take that in for review in January, do the analysis, and then an updated Version 3 of the National Competency Framework will be released at the end of March. And that's going to be our standardised process. We just hope GDAD stops coming out with new roles because it seems to take up a lot of our time.
But I think it's really important that we keep the framework fresh. And I'm sounding like an advert for, you know, fresh fruit and vegetable. But it needs to stay relevant. It needs to be reflecting what the challenges we've got at the moment. And if you look at it and go, oh, they've missed that bit. I mean, if you think it's completely rubbish, then fine, you know, don't use it. But if you think, oh, if they just did that, that'd be a bit better. If only they'd asked me, I'd have said do that way. Get involved. Get that's the whole point of this. This framework has evolved in a collaborative way, engaging with the community throughout the, you know, from day one. From, you know, the early days when it was kicking off with AFA behind us. And that's the way it has to continue, because that's the way it's going to stay relevant, and working closely with AFA and setting those professional standards, you know, knowing that this is the level you need to be attaining in this area to be deemed, you know, ready to go for professional accreditation. I think that's hugely important, and making sure we keep driving those standards. Talk of curatorship at one point. Where do we stand? Well, I think that's one of the things that's still got to be decided. You know, obviously we're in an organisation that won't be here in 18 months' time. So I think that is something that needs to be established, is where it goes and who then does that ongoing maintenance of it, who then makes sure that it keeps being refreshed and done. I don't know where that will sit within the 10-year plan, but hopefully that I think there's sufficient need now for us to keep pushing forwards on becoming a professionalised workforce, and the requirement is there for us to do it. That I think hopefully it will find a home at some point.
Yeah, but we don't know.
No,
we don't know. We'd like to think that this, alongside the broader professionalisation across DDAT, would be a function that the Department of Health believes that it should continue doing, but it's not statutory. So we know Ming is behind this area of work. She considers it to be incredibly important. But as I say, we can't guarantee our existence past October of 2026. So we're determined to get this into a routine. One of the things we're obviously also doing this year is we are writing a methodology piece on all this work, on how to create competency frameworks, using the National Competency Framework as an example, trying to get that out as a publication. So the knowledge of how this work has happened does not get lost, even if we are no longer here.
I think that Scotland are actually trying to go through a competency framework themselves. I'll put you in touch with them, and you might be able to help them.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anecdotally, like you say, you don't know where you'll be, but there's still a very, you know, there's a lot of keenness there to keep this sort of stuff going in developing the profession. So hopefully, you know, they'll come through with the funding and everything that needs to be done to support it. Kay, you have a question?
First of all, I'd like to express my sympathy and well wishes to everyone, not only in NHS England and the ICB colleagues, but everywhere, who are going through this transition and potentially losing their jobs. I've actually just lost my job. I was in an acute trust on a fixed term contract doing data analytics, and I'm, like many people, wondering about the future. Can I get another job? I've been trying, but the competition for jobs is just horrendous, and I am concerned about keeping my skills current. I'm still in the NHS, but in a much reduced banding and everything. So have you got any tips and advice? I mean, I have seen your competency framework before, and I've worked through an earlier version, although it didn't actually seem relevant in my last particular role. But it's like, you know, is there a future for so many data analytic analysts in, you know, in going forward. Sorry if that sounds very negative, but
no, it's not at all. It's the reality of when we go through a big major restructure. I think this is probably the first time we've always been considered a growth area before. So we've actually always been relatively protected in a lot of ways from other areas and other restructures. I think we are still considered to be generally an area for development and growth. We can't turn around and ignore things like the Prime Minister turning around and saying, you know, he wants to up the percentage of digital data and technology staff as a percentage of civil service grades. You know, at the moment, the NHS has about 3% of our staff is DDAP professions. Within the civil service, it's 6%. Within private industry, it's 9%. And he basically said he wants 10% of civil service staff to be DDAP. Now, that could be achieved by just reducing the overall headcount of civil service staff as a proportion. We all know how stats work. But we do know this is going to be a growth area. The reality is we are going to go through a period of uncertainty and contraction now. We know that predictive analytics is all over, and AI is all over those particular areas. So I think it's an opportunity for us to turn around and go, traditional analytics in the way we've probably thought of it over the last 20 years is the part that's really going to change. So I would be suggesting to everybody right now would be to really take a look at their skill sets, to look at where their transferable skills are, to look at possibly how do I specialize, how do I really enhance my skills in those particular areas. The challenge we have is our current work often isn't asking us and isn't giving us the practical experience to do those work areas, because it's what people are saying they want. It's not what but we're still being asked to do statutory returns. And we're still being asked to do all of this grunt work. Let's turn the handle on these ridiculous amounts of dashboards that none of our customers are then either looking at or knowing how to self-serve on. So I think there is an element of we're having to carve out and advocate for, right, well, how are we going to meet this further for future service thing? So one of the things Andy and I are doing is we are going on and talking. We're on the CIO touch base call next week. So we are going to be pushing out to all the CIOs. How do you know what your analytics workforce? Do you know what the capability and skills are that you've got? You probably don't. Do you know if you've got capability for predictive analytics? This is saying you should be able to do this, but can you? So should you not be rolling out and understanding what the capability and skills are? Should you not be then supporting the development of those skills within your existing workforce now, and not waiting till the demand is there and you're having to bring in expensive consultancy firms to plug the gap of skills because you've not invested in this development? So that's what we're doing. We're doing what we can to raise awareness with the only people that might have the power to then make changes within their workforce locally.
I think you've hit on a very good point, because I was on a fixed term contract and let go. Yeah, I was the only one, or one of only a couple of people who were doing, you know, like machine learning and predictive analysts.
Yeah.
But so I'm slightly biased in that opinion, of course. Also wanted to ask a question, please, for Jane, because you're from Alpha, is that right?
Yeah.
I still am very, very keen to get professionally accredited, but I'm not currently working in an analytics role. I'm working part-time for another branch of the NHS, but nothing to do with analytics.
Okay.
But I'm hoping, God willing, one day I can come back. So
We do.
How can I still get accredited
Yes.
for previous work, or can I download some data sets from NHS Digital and do something with them, or what can I do?
If you have, so you've obviously been working in analytics already, fairly recently. So the data, the professional registration is about you being able to evidence that you have the skills to, you know, deliver those competencies. We see the competency framework as like the toolbox of these are the skills you need, and the professional registration is the evidence that you have the skills to use those tools properly. We it's nothing to do with who your current organization is, your job title or anything, as long as it's recent. So if you can provide evidence of analytics works you've done within the last year, so you can take it from your previous employment. It might take you a bit longer to gather some of the evidence, potentially, unless you have things saved that you can, use as your evidence. If you've still got your SQL scripts, if you've still got presentations you might have done, if you've still got access to meeting minutes that show that you spoke about something at a meeting, shows collaboration, communication. As long as you can still gather that evidence together, then it's worth coming in and, going in and having a look and going through it. It doesn't have to be your job now. It does have to be signed off. If you can get a peer or your from that previous role or your line manager from that previous role to sign it off to say, yes, everything she's saying here, I can absolutely verify is what she did, then don't worry about not being in that role now. So hopefully you can get that registration done sooner rather than later. So as you go forward applying for jobs, you can say you have that registration.
Yeah, I think it might be slightly problematical because although my last job was recent, it was mainly just doing the statutory. Well, it wasn't quite so much. I think they've closed down all my accounts. That's a problem. Oh, well.
You can join up, you can professionally register. There's 5 levels, and the associate level is like the opening level, and it's not the same as all. So there's the practitioner level, advanced, senior, and leading, and they are all the different standards that you have to answer the questions. You have to do your reflective practices. You have to do your evidence. The associate level, you just write, I don't know, I think it's about 500 words or something to say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've done, and I commit to becoming professionally registered at one of the practitioner levels sometime in the next 2 years. And by doing that, you will actually still go on the public register as an associate practitioner, even though you haven't been through the full registration process. So that's another way. But if you go along to professional workshop, then you can certainly get some idea. And all those professional registration workshops are saved on the AFA website. And likewise, to do this, because FedIP is our governing body, if you go in and go through the professional registration process and sign up so you can download the application forms, you're under no obligation to then do it there and then. You can start having a look through and slow time decide as and when you can actually go forward with it.
Okay, thank you very much. And you said there's intakes at certain times of the year?
So July quarterly. So this month, between the 1st and 31st of July, we are accepting applications. So it's probably a bit late for you this month, but October, the window will open again. So there'll be a workshop in September to help people through the process. There is a final workshop, I think, for the professional registration for this month, but it's more a Q&A wind up for those that have already completed.
But if you just wanted to become an associate, you could still join this quarter.
You could do that this quarter, absolutely. It's well worth going and signing up and doing that. And then sometime over the next 2 years, you're just saying, I will go for the practitioner level.
Right, okay.
I'm aware that it's 1 o'clock, but I'm happy to still, if anyone, are you still happy to take questions? I can't pronounce your name, Tommy Dope. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Please, my question is to Sarah. I work as a beer analyst with a local trust. And as you mentioned, what we do is to build more dashboard upon dashboard that even your service team will not even check or they can't even do it themselves. But even though you have the skills of AI or machine learning already, the question is this: there is no opportunity provided for you to apply that. And if you are trying to innovate and see how can I put this skill into use within your work, it can't be ethical for you to start taking patient data and try testing different algorithms on them. That won't be ethical.
No.
So what advice you give someone who has these skills, and how can that person be able to implement and innovate to make it useful for its local
Okay.
trust?
So obviously it is a challenge when you're going from, you've got a particular culture and a particular way of working within an organization. I think the challenge I would always set someone is, firstly, you've got to make space for innovation. So it's going to be around, if you're spending a load of your time, I say, turning the handle on existing dashboard content, the first thing I would be asking would be, what can you do to automate reproducible analytical pipe? It's for so much about about this stuff is, how do you create time for innovation? So how do you automate as much as you possibly can? So if you've got coding skills already that you've got around machine learning, then surely those can be applied to, how do I automate the processes around what I've already got to free up time and capacity? Secondly, it is going to be around, you've got to find a particular project. So once you've freed up time for innovation, I would suggest you've got to find, if you're in a trust, you're going to find some data focused clinician, right? You're going to have somebody who has a particular pet project or something like that, that they are really interested in doing a pilot or a project around. Or possibly even then looking at sort of opportunities that's working across an integrated care system for a particular area. So sometimes it is about putting your head above that parapet and coming up with those suggestions, finding those contacts, saying, who wants to do something about this? Who's interested in looking and experimenting? Because often people don't understand how these things can be applied in their trust until they've seen a worked example based on their systems, based on a particular problem they've got locally. So it's about starting that snowball. It's about changing that culture and finding the other people who you can find who will advocate for those changes on your behalf.
So thank you. So if you find someone, then can you use the trust data to test through on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it completely depends what you're using things for, because obviously you could be introducing all different types of AI things. So a lot of trusts have obviously been introducing ambient voice technology. Older Hay have been doing that, for example, around how that is then doing evaluation of what that impact that's been happening, diagnostic based stuff. So I'm not saying we're moving into AI that would be impacting on patient care. Those things are really structured and have research structures all about it, etc. What I would be looking for is, what could we be using? What could we be doing more efficiently using more advanced techniques within ours? So that might be coming along to CPD and looking at content on Analyst X of where other people have done things, say around RTT or these sorts of things, local problems that are going to be consistent and issues regardless of where you're going, where someone has created the appropriate model or sort of thing. And your challenge could be, how do we apply this? How do we customize it to our stuff locally and integrate it into our decision making? So that's what I would suggest is find a particular issue and problem that is causing locally, find the other people to advocate who want to do a change, and then basically do it as a small pilot of how then that sort of more advanced technology and approach could be used. The biggest challenge is getting people to just make that first step change, to take the blinkers off and start looking around at those sort of opportunities.
Thank you very much.
Right, I think then probably because we've gone over time to finish, because everybody will probably want to get off to lunch or their next meeting if they haven't already gone. Thank you all for coming. The presentation will be available, recording, and the slides will also be made available. So if you want to go back over anything, because there was a lot of information there, then they'll be made available to you. Thank you very much, Andy and Sarah. I'm sure we'll have you back again another time.
Thank you.
Can I say? Yeah. Thank you,
See you all.
everyone.
Bye bye.